Well-being really refers to people living in a dynamic state where they're able to develop their full potential, to work productively and creatively, to build strong and positive relationships with others, to contribute to their community, and to feel happiness and fulfillment in what they're doing. And there's a big focus on this at this time of COVID-19, with people realizing that it's important to find ways to create well-being, mental wellness, even in lockdown, and to find ways to do that, and there are ways. Mind and body are really two legs of the same being. They go together. If the body is not functioning well, that affects the functioning of the brain and the mind. An example of that is nutrition, where research has shown that people who eat junk food, and we know that junk food is a cardiovascular risk factor because of all the trans fats in those, also have a 37% greater incidence of depression and anxiety. So what happens in the body happens in the brain and the mind as well. And similarly, if we're depressed, that lowers our immunity. So it works both ways. You can't separate them out. So well-being means physical wellness and mental wellness together. The World Health Organization has said very clearly, and I think it's probably the most striking statement we could find on this. They've said there is no health without mental health. So you can be as fit as can be, but if your mind is turbulent, or if you're depressed or anxious or traumatized, physical fitness minus mental wellness equals not good health, unfortunately. So their point is there is no health without mental health. And they go on and they say mental health is central to the human, social, and economic capital of nations. And the World Health Organization considers that mental health, and we would take it a step further and say mental wellness, which includes resilience and flourishing, optimal functioning, should be part of other public policy areas outside health, including human rights and social care, education, and of course the workplace. The higher the use of digital media, the lower the level of mental health. And in reverse, the lower the level of use of digital media, the higher the level of mental health. And there have been a number of studies done on this. So it's really important in this time of social isolation and lockdown that young people who naturally sort of have spent their lives communicating and connecting and enjoying through social media and digital media understand this, that increased use of digital media has been found again and again to be associated with decreased levels of mental health. So we need to be a bit disciplined about how we use it, you know, and use it as we need it, and schedule time with our friends and so on, and not in an addictive way, just stay there all the time and checking and, you know, online looking at things that don't matter. But having human interactions, doing exercise at home, if we've got a garden, getting out into the garden, or if we're allowed to go into a nearby park, getting out into that, actually living a real life rather than a virtual life, that contributes to mental health and well-being. There is a connection, a direct pathway between the gut and the brain. You know, in the past, we always used to think about the blood-brain barrier, that the brain was protected from pathogens and so on from elsewhere in the body by the blood-brain barrier. Anything carried through in the blood would be blocked by the blood-brain barrier. We've since learned in recent years there's what's being called the gut-brain axis, which is a pathway from the gut to the brain, and the vagus nerve seems to be one of the main components of this axis. So what we're learning is that if the Bacteria in the gut, what we refer to as the microbiome, it's a whole system of microbes. So we call it a biome rather than just microbes. It's an ecosystem. If that's balanced, if it's healthy in the gut, then that actually communicates with the brain that it is healthy and it sends correct nutrients to the brain. The brain, we should note, uses 20% of the body's energy. When you consider in terms of mass what a little lump of tissue the brain is compared with the many kgs of the rest of the body, 20% of the body's energy goes to the brain. That's our command center. So it's important that that command center has proper fuel. And that fuel comes from our food. And so a healthy gut, healthy microbes, a healthy gut microbiome is really important in that. And one of the problems underlying all disease, particularly chronic disease, is what we know as inflammation. Inflammation occurs in the gut when food is not properly digested. And when food is not properly digested, particles of it are left in the gut undigested. Now that can come about through food being improperly prepared, unhealthy food, not chewing food properly, doing things that inactivate the natural cycle of gut metabolism, including drinking iced water with a meal, because temperature goes up during digestion. Temperature in the gut goes up during digestion. And one of the things that happens then is that enzymes are released with increased temperature in the gut that are specifically designed to break down food. If we have a glass of ice water or a cold drink with a meal, then that stops that temperature of the gut going up. The correct enzymes aren't fully released. Food is not properly digested. Parts of it stay and they rot, or they oxidize, as we would say, and become a source of oxidative stress or free radical generation. Associated with that is inflammation. That gets carried through the blood supply, and it can get carried to the brain. And it's now been identified that chronic inflammation is one of the main underlying causes of mental illness. So our diet and our gut microbiome have got important roles in affecting the body's inflammatory processes, and these in turn impact the brain's health in numerous ways. So what we can do about that is to do a number of things recommended by nutritional and neuroscience researchers, which is to restrict calories that we take, to have anti-inflammatory food, and you're talking to me from Asia. Turmeric is widely used in South Asian and Southeast Asian foods. It's a very powerful anti-inflammatory agent. So antioxidants, many of the herbs and spices used in East Asian and Southeast Asian and South Asian foods have antioxidant properties. So traditional spices are very important. Frying food is one of the ways that causes oxidative stress. Red meat is a source of oxidation. So cutting down on the amount of red meat eaten is important. Some of the supplements that have been found to reduce inflammation are omega-3 fatty acids, which we can get from fish oil or from krill oil or from seaweed. People who are vegetarian or vegan don't want to eat fish oil or krill oil supplements, and they say, where can we get omega-3 from? Well, same place the fish get it from, which is seaweed. Other things are prebiotics, like probiotics, sorry, like yogurt, not yoga. Yogurt is also very good, but we're talking about foods here. Yogurt, kefir, kombucha, kimchi from Korea, fermented soy paste. These are all fermented foods that help support and promote the brain's health and to drive the growth of new connections and new pathways in the brain that we call neuroplasticity. Also, prebiotics are important. Prebiotics aren't really biotic in a direct sense according to their nature, but they stimulate a process of microbiome activity. So prebiotics are like fiber in your food. So if you have wholemeal bread with fiber in it, that activates the gut and stimulates healthy microbe activity, whereas refined white bread, refined white rice, and so on, refined sugars do the opposite. A study from the UK done by collaboration between Oxford Economics and the National Centre for Social Research in the UK found that, and here's their quote, "A good night's sleep is worth more than quadrupling your disposable income. Better sleep is the biggest single contributor to living better." It's basically saying the body has cycles according to the time of day and night when it's active and less active. In the middle of the day, the sun is high, the temperature is high, we're hungry at lunchtime. That's when the body is most active, burning up energy. It's why we want a good lunch. And then with evening, it slows down. Now you see birds and animals all just go quiet around this time. We don't. But our ancestors did. Since the development of electric light, electricity and electric lights, we've assumed we can create daylight or the equivalent of daylight any time of day or night, and that if we can, we will. But if we can, we will doesn't mean we should, because our body is programmed to do something different. It's programmed to slow down in the night. And you know that you're yawning, you're getting sleepy, and then around between 10 and 10:30, you get a second wind. And then, whoa, you're going again. And that's because the body, by 10, the chronobiological cycle is programmed for you to be sleeping. The light from the screen activates the pineal gland in the brain, which produces melatonin, which is a neurotransmitter that is associated with rest. So the higher the levels of melatonin, the greater the level of rest in the body. Light stops the pineal gland through the optic nerve going into that midbrain area. The light stimulating the pineal gland says to it, oh, it's not night anymore. So it stops producing melatonin. So you're not generating the biochemistry of good sleep. A project that our team in the Mental Wellness Initiative worked on for a year and a half, and we launched 18 months ago. It's called a white paper on mental wellness, and its subtitle is Pathways, Evidence and Horizons. So pathways to mental wellness, evidence about the pathways and horizons. Where is this? How far does mental wellness go? What does it mean? What's the big picture? And so what we did was we gathered scientific evidence, the latest and the best scientific evidence for all the things that people know and experts recommend for wellness, but particularly for mental wellness, and decided to put science behind it. Is there evidence that social support makes a difference to people's mental well-being? Is there evidence that meditation and prayer can make a difference to people's mental well-being? How about exercise? You know, we know that it's important for physical health. What does it do for mental health? We've heard exercise is good for you, healthy nutrition is important, but I don't think we really understand the science behind it at all, most people. And that's what we've tried to put in the white paper, so that people understand, when I move, this is what happens to my body, but this is what happens to my brain and my immune system. My immune system gets boosted by exercise. I become stronger and more resistant to infection if I exercise. My brain, when I exercise, benefits from enhanced immunity. It benefits from the endorphins produced by exercise and elevates mood. With higher levels of endorphin production, it changes brain chemistry and mood is elevated as well.